Hey, everybody. Welcome to LiveCast Conversations with, as always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier, the Enjoyment Coach. This is episode 43, and I get to have Jeff Swan on the show. Jeff's a founder, sales coach, and a podcast host. Jeff is a 16-year sales and marketing veteran who loves to geek out on all things email, cold calling sequence, and the technology which supports sales reps. He is passionate about turning SDRs and sales reps into prospecting machines through his Outbound SOS program, which is a 3-step framework for optimizing sales scripts, sequences, and workflows for continuously increasing booked meetings and win rate conversations by over 10%. Jeff focuses on using data, messaging, tools, and providing guided support to achieve this for the teams he works with. As well, Jeff is also the co-host with Tom Slocum of the Fill the Funnel podcast, which is a weekly conversation on what it is and isn't working in the world of outbound sales. Jeff and Tom provide insights on what sales reps, BDRs, SDRs, and pipeline-driven founders do to generate pipeline on a day-to-day basis. They discuss current trends and tactics, which can help anyone with cold calling, building and optimizing your sequences, or rocking your personal brand on LinkedIn. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Gene. That was a really well done intro. I think it sounds better than what I say about myself.
It's always weird hearing those coming from somebody else. I find no matter how it is, it's kind of cool sitting there hearing those own words, and it just never does sound the same coming out of your own mouth.
Totally.
So, you obviously 16 years in sales and marketing. That's a long journey. Mm-hmm. And now you're helping people understand that and break it back down to how they can be successful in it, because sales is a tough gig. Oh. How did you get into it, and like what keeps you being passionate for it after 16 years?
Well, you know what's funny is that I got into it by accident on purpose. Oh. So I put myself through university business school by actually selling at Future Shop. So for those who aren't as old as me, that's Best Buy. And at the time it was actually commission only. So what I would do is I'd go in for a 4-hour shift at the end of the night after a long day of learning all these really cool tips and tricks about marketing and business and influence and all those things. And I'd turn that 4-hour shift into, $200, $300 commission, which far surpassed what I was previously making at Home Depot, was about $11 an hour.
Yeah.
And so it was a really cool way for me to really apply what I learned in business school and actually have legitimate ways to prove the concepts and try them out, use them, and then have really meaningful stuff to say back in my projects and my assignments and whatnot. So what was really cool about it was I took every single marketing course in my school. Most people were taking dual majors, trying to be safe, blah, 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 finance, accounting, marketing, accounting, finance, accounting, so all that stuff. And I was just like, no, I want to be in marketing. Like, this is just what I want to do. And what happened was I learned marketing from the textbook while simultaneously learning sales from real life, while at the same time volunteering, doing marketing for like the student association and events that we were putting on. So I had a really well-rounded perspective around revenue generation that made me respect both sides so well that I've spent my entire career working on the fence between sales and marketing, on leaning one side or leaning the other.
Right. That's really interesting to be that young, be in it, and know that that's where you want to be, and being able to take that book learning and then every night going and applying it and tweaking it, getting right into the ground, at the ground level, going, what about all this is actual legit, and what is, in theory should be good, but it actually isn't.
Exactly. And you know what? Like, I had people that I was working with that were just, they wowed me with what they were capable of doing. Some of them were high school dropouts. Some of them were going to college just like me. Others were just, their first job out of school. But the amount of talent and the different personalities that I saw and the different ways people approach the exact same thing, selling the same thing to the same people, it really made me think of how how amazing the sales world really is.
That's interesting to take. Like, that's an interesting perspective, right? Like, especially if you walk into Future Shop. I used to work for Future Shop as well, so I remember it.
There you go.
But like being able to walk into there, now walk into Best Buy, knowing that you're looking for a phone or you're looking for a piece of electronics, and knowing that if you had 5 people come at you, there could be 5 different approaches and 5 different sets of questions, and all of them you could really resonate with, or trying to then understand, was there a bit like on the floor, everybody kind of understood who was their target customer, and were they able to identify that, or did everybody have their own tactics to work with regardless of who walked through that door?
Right. Well, that's actually a really important point, is that on the retail floor, you're not necessarily able to kind of cherry pick your clients, right? You can, but it's not very effective. And a lot of times your manager will straight up tell you, no, Gene, go over there. Like, you need to talk to that person, right? You don't really get the choice. But what's really cool is, as I transitioned over to B2B sales, is that one of the key differentiators between a really successful sales team and a really unsuccessful sales team, or even just a middling one that never really makes that next level of growth, is understanding your target customer personas. So really understanding who you're selling to, what unique situation they're in, what I call it the hero's journey story, what they're on, and how that relates to your job and what you're supposed to do to actually help them out.
Right. So when it's retail, you basically have to deal with the people that are coming through the door. But in a business to business sense, like, you actually have to be very clear about niching down about who it is specifically that you're talking to, so you can craft that message very succinctly, I'd imagine.
Exactly. It's the messaging, it's the approach, it's the questions you ask, it's the way you answer. When you know your customer and you know them intimately and what they're experiencing in their world, you're able to have so much more of an impact on the problems that they're facing that than if you didn't.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I have 2 kind of questions around, like, the first one is, you talk about sales and marketing and being on 2 sides of that fence. Like, how would you describe those 2 sides of that fence? Because sometimes that can get really muddled.
Yeah. So the way that I look at it, and for the longest time, my core methodology was all around one funnel. So it was just creating this one revenue funnel from the top all the way down to revenue, and then all the way through. And for the longest time, I really didn't look at sales and marketing as anything different as just activities. Okay. So it was just like, okay, we both have to do the same things. You're using a megaphone, I'm using a sniper, right? Like, there's just like different tools that you use. So the salespeople would use phone and email, and the marketers would use social media and webinars and media and trade media, all that fun stuff. So I looked at it as the same thing, different roles. My perception on it has evolved. I still believe that they need to be aligned in one department, but there's a mindset difference between sales and marketing that needs to be addressed and needs to be understood. Is that the mindset of a sales rep is that I'm going to go out there and help the person on the other end. I'm going to get a meeting. I'm going to get a sale. And everything that they do is around what they need to do today to make their numbers happen today. Okay. So there's this like kind of more urgent mindset of like, I need to be producing every single day, every single month, every single quarter. When you're looking at marketers, they have the luxury of looking at it more from a macro level, so more of the group effort. And they want to look at things as more strategic, more long-term, more bigger impacts than just a single situation. And so when you look at even the way that marketers and salespeople look at products, as an example, a sales rep will come up every single sales conversation and say, this customer needs this feature, so add this feature. This customer didn't like that, so that sucks. Don't sell it anymore, whatever. A marketer will say, well, the trends are saying that these are features that are really important. So that's a really long way of saying the fact that you do have to respect that there is a mindset difference, and both people come from different areas, but they're both going towards the same goal. And the best leaders, the best CEOs, the best chief revenue officers who manage both sales and marketing, they're ones that understand these differences and know how to put them together and align them around the same mission, but respect the different mindsets and the different activities that they're doing.
Right. So that's an interesting take on it. Is like marketing's a much more broader. It's kind of a little bit more safer because they get to play in weeks, maybe even months in the campaigns that they're doing. Whereas the SDRs and the sales reps that are on the floor, they're in the dirt. They're in the trenches, and they're making calls, and they're talking to the customers or leads on a daily basis, because that's what they got to do. That's where their numbers are. So it's about driving that awareness from the marketing side, getting people excited to the point that they're ready to actually have a person-to-person conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's one more aspect to that too, is that where sales and marketing teams really get in trouble is in the points where the buyer experience interact or overlap. So in a lot of B2B organizations, you have what's called sales development. So I don't know, are you familiar with that term?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So sales development, for those listening at home, is essentially the person responsible for, or the department responsible for booking and generating meetings. So they're filling the funnel for the sales reps, and the sales reps are taking that full funnel and turning it into closed revenue. So what's interesting is that a lot of teams, it's amazing, even though sales development and sales might be on the exact same team with the exact same leader, how much conflict exists in a lot of organizations. So sales says not good enough leads, not enough leads. Sales development says, why aren't you accepting my leads? Why aren't you following up?
Yeah.
Right. So the way that we solve for that is actually a really clear and concise handoff process between sales development and sales, or marketing and sales development, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and document it, train people on it, and adjust it on the fly as different situations come up that make you feel like this handoff might not be working anymore.
Right. So it's the way to remove that conflict is then making it really clear about how they transition that lead all the way down to a potential new client, right? Where marketing has got them over the last few months, had all those touches out there, be it social media, email, whatever it is, to the point that they then can go, cool, now they can be dropped into the SDR bucket. Yep. SDR has to have those initial conversations, make sure they're the right fit, ask the front up questions. Then the SDR hands that off to the sales rep, who then closes it and off into production or buying a product or whatever that is.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's all these parts, and it's a disparate buyer journey these days. It's like, it used to be just you talk to a sales rep, you get everything you need to know from them, and then you buy, right?
Yeah.
But now, I mean, even before we enter the sales process, even before marketing gets a hand of it, people are researching on their own. They're finding out, they're going to webinars, they're watching podcasts like this, and they're learning so much. By the time they get to you, you're not really teaching them. You're more about facilitating their evaluation than anything before.
Yeah, they want to make sure that there's trustworthiness is a big thing that's coming down the pipe, and a lot more transparency around it. I don't know if that's the right word, but people are able to go off and find out a lot more about the company. I was actually listening to a podcast recently where they were talking about the psychology around it. And it's just like, well, like people think about, oh, you're out there being on social, you can kind of do whatever you want. But it's like if a company has a leader who's on social media, or leaders, and they actually are the things that are building up that reputation and that trust. It's like that frontline component. So can somebody look at that company and be like, am I just a number? Are they just a number? Or do they have these personas that are out there actively trying to engage in conversations?
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point, is that when people are doing this and they're engaging in conversations, like if you look back before all of this influencer marketing and all this stuff, you could be in a sales conversation and you could say something like, podcasts are the best for marketing, right? You could say that, and people would believe you, and they would learn about it from you, and they would just accept what you send them, and they would say, okay, yeah, well, Gene told me that podcasts are the best for marketing, right? Now they have an echo chamber of thousands of people, hundreds of people, all telling you that podcasts are great, podcasts aren't great. Here's when you use them. Here's when you shouldn't use them. And even when you have somebody who trusts you and bought from you and like hangs off your every word and is your biggest fan, they're still going to be skeptic. They're still going to want you to continually prove that you're transparent and you're trustworthy.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I guess, the way that you phrase that is just like, it's the same thing. It's like people don't work at the same jobs or companies for 30 years like they used to. Like that customer loyalty just isn't this, like, it can take a long time to earn, but it can take a moment to shatter. And if they even get a whiff of it, you've got so many competitors out there that they can go, nah, I don't like this, and literally like pick up the phone or go back online and be done. And it might be really hard to earn that back.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. It kind of it leads to a post of one of my colleagues the other day when he was talking about, is cold calling dead or is cold calling more important? And the concept behind what he was talking about was that people, again, when you only had, let's say, 3 competitors, somebody calls you and you have an entire conversation, you learn everything there is to know about them, and it's really easy for you to get to make your way above, you become really, really valuable as the salesperson because there's not a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
And so that was the assertion that my colleague said, and a lot of people agreed with him. And, everybody's commenting saying, yeah, go ahead. That's exactly it. And then one person wrote something that I thought was absolutely genius, is that he said, I'm going to be a contrarian here, but the fact of the matter is I think the salesperson is more important now, because I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of like the psychology of choice.
I've heard it before. Yeah.
So the more choices that you have out there, the more people or the more options that you have, the harder it is to make a decision.
Yeah.
And so psychologists were saying, I think it was anything over 3 choices makes it really difficult. So now when you have 1,000 different competitors, the salesperson who calls you up, that guides you through your evaluation and guides you through learning and the development of your evaluation, that's the person that becomes really valuable. And even if their solution isn't right, you're still going to have a really good positive feeling for them. And then you might send other people to them, even if you can't buy from your organization.
Yeah. Well, so it's flipping back to being less transactional and coming back to the relationship, right? Like that's with so many options out there. How do you help them reduce the amount of options?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's the way that we describe it in our program. So we do a training program called Outbound Rescue, and we teach people how to use our methodology for prospecting. And basically, what we teach people is that, so the methodology is called Alfred, and the concept behind it is that if you look at Batman is a superhero that's not so super.
Yeah.
How is he super, Gene?
Well, as they say in the movie, his superpower, he's rich, right? Like
he's rich. He has gadgets. He has capes. He has these crazy suits. He has this humongous crazy suit that allows him to fight Superman. Like, isn't that crazy? Right? But the concept, if you really watch those movies, shows, comics, whatever, you'll notice there's one person in the background making sure the suit is pressed, the suit is ready, it's repaired after everything, that the Batmobile has gas in it, all this stuff. And who is that person?
It's Alfred.
Right.
Without Alfred, there would be no Batman.
There would be no Batman, right? The problem is that every salesperson out there wants to be Batman. They want to be the hero that saves the day, that makes sure that your organization kicks ass because I'm the salesperson that's going to come in and save the day, right? What they don't realize is their role is actually not to be the superhero. It's to be the guide. It's to be the servant. The servant that allows the superhero to go out there and fight huge, crazy foes like Superman.
So you're training a whole bunch of Alfreds to realize there's a buttload of Batmans out there just waiting for that support.
Exactly. And as soon as you have that mentality shift, as soon as you think service over sales, which is the reason it's outbound SOS, service over sales. As the reason, the immediate time you start thinking about that, you start to think of sales in a completely different methodology, a different framework. You're not thinking of how can I book more meetings? How can I close more business? How can I sell more? What you're thinking is, how can I help more people achieve their hero's journey?
It's powerful to be able to to think about that, and to be able to to work for somebody that actually views sales in that way. That'd be actually a really fun, career, versus going, oh man, I get to go to work and be Tom's gonna just bust on me for not hitting my numbers again because I missed one dial. So how then does the fictitious Tom, the leader, take that servant mindset and use it as a way to I guess, sales is a performance gig. So how do you then shift the conversation around what does performance mean in a sales, a service over sales mentality?
So first, you have to think of, you're never going to get rid of the numbers. So they're always going to be there, right? You're going to have to hit your number. You're going to have to book your meetings and close your sales. It's not, this concept isn't an escape from that. It's more in the mentality of how we look at the customer and the customer interaction. So to your point, you were mentioning how many dials, right? Are there optimal level of activities that lead to consistent performance? Absolutely. Does that mean that Jeff Swan and Gene are both going to run that the same way every single time and do the same job? I haven't seen it.
Well, you already learned that at Future Shop that doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen at all, right? Some guys go out there and they talk to every single person and they smile and they shake hands and they follow the 10% guarantee perfectly and do all these different things, and they eventually get their numbers. And then others just come in there and they saunter around and they wait for somebody to come to them, and then they just boom, they just perform on the dot and they still meet the same numbers. The process is not always the same, and everybody has different personalities. So there's two things. You have to think about it this way. What I just described to you as the salesperson, but you have to think of the customer the same way as well, is that when you're a sales leader, you have sales reps that are the first type. You have sales reps that are the second type. So you have to be a servant leader. You have to understand their process and stop trying to make everybody fit into this same bucket, but understand your sales reps and what actually will help them become the Batman of your sales team.
Right.
Okay. So as I said, a lot of people look at, okay, I'm going to create this playbook. I'm going to write, this is the optimal level of activities. I'm going to make sure that everybody has to do 100 dials a day, 40 emails a day, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make sure their lives are miserable if they don't hit these targets.
Yeah.
But if you know that you have somebody, okay, so I'll give you a quick story really quickly. So I had two sales reps. Both were pipeline generators. They were full cycle salespeople. Both had very different mentalities in the way they went about their day. One would show up every single day, 7 o'clock in the morning. He would work directly till 3:30. He'd take a half-hour lunch, eat at his desk, and it was like clockwork, 7 to 12, 12:30 to 3:30, every single day. Didn't change at all. He did more activities than I'd ever seen anybody do in a day. Yeah. More calls, more emails, more everything. He reposted every little bit of marketing content we created every single day. He created a network, and this was before social selling was really a core tactic by SDRs and sales reps. And I'm not gonna lie, he wasn't very good at conversations.
It's not shocking at all. It sounds he's got a system. He's a process guy, not a conversation guy.
Exactly. He's not a conversation guy. He's not a messaging guy, but he was amazing at the process. So he actually consistently hit his number. So much so that he was consistently hitting his number, but he wasn't getting the right target audience. And so we weren't hitting our sales goals, even though he had his goals every time.
Yeah.
And guess what? As soon as we changed his compensation package to be around the right customers, he hit his target there too.
Well, because he had a goal he could work towards, right? And That's it. When you talk about servant leadership, it's just like, I want to jump in, but like it's that shifting of the goal is like, are we going to focus on the activities, or am I going to focus on the outcomes with my teams, right? Like the same thing from building production teams is like, I could either micromanage the hell out of how you're going to go about your day, or I'm going to accept I'm hiring an adult. And if I can't work with you to say, hey, do you understand where we're going?
Yeah.
It's your job to figure out the steps to get there. And I'll help you remove any roadblocks. But we look up and we look at our outcome, not the daily activities.
Exactly. Outcome over activities, right?
Yeah.
And so the second sales rep was very smart. He'd been a CEO of a corporation before, and he was definitely had a good work ethic, but his strength was the conversations. So he was kind of the opposite. He didn't really do the process. He wanted to make his own. He was what you call a lone wolf salesperson. If you ever read the Challenger sale, he wanted to do things his way. He wanted to find his methodology and his place for success. So as part of this story, really quickly, I was not being a servant sales leader at the time. I believed in the process, and I was trying to force him into this box. He didn't perform.
Yeah.
As soon as I started letting go of some of the things that I wanted, because the other sales rep, that was exactly what I wanted. I wanted somebody to show up like clockwork, do it, and go. As soon as I started giving him more autonomy, as soon as he started, reading books on his own and doing all these different things and finding his own way, next thing you know, he eclipsed the other guy consistently.
Yeah.
So what was interesting about that is that it wasn't them who was the problem at the time, it was me.
You became your own roadblock.
I was my own roadblock. I was trying to fit them in this perfect box, and both weren't doing it well.
Yeah.
Right? As soon as I allowed myself to let off the gas, and like you said, I'm hiring adults here. Next thing you know, they put up the biggest quarter in our company history.
Yeah.
Right? So that was the sales rep. So that's like the concept of the servant leader there. I really looked at, okay, you're the superhero in this situation. You're Batman. I'm Alfred. How can I help you? Right. And then that already right there breeds trust. It breeds respect. It breeds like you want to get up in the morning and actually do the best for the team.
Yeah.
Right. Even if they leave because they got a better opportunity elsewhere, they say nothing but good things about you, leave you a good Glassdoor interview, a review, etc. When it comes time to the actual sales function itself, is you start to look at your messaging and you go, okay, why am I talking about how awesome my company is and how great our results are and what awards we've had won and all these other things, when it's really not about me.
Yeah.
They don't care how long I've been in business. They don't care that I was a keynote speaker at blah, blah, blah. What they care about is, I understand what you're going through. There's a solution that you need. There's a problem that you're facing that I'm aware of a solution. And even if I don't have it, I'm going to tell you about it.
Yeah.
So one more story, and this one's going to be quick, I swear.
Oh, yeah, no worries. Keep it coming.
As I was working in the industrial space a couple of years ago, my partner and I, we had this mentality that we had a set product. So very different than digital products, very different than software, all that stuff. We had physical products where no matter what happens, you're not gonna fill everybody's direct need.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was in flood prevention. So we'd look at a building and we'd say, okay, this is what we sell. This is what you need. So we can fix this, but we're going to find, and we made it part of our sales process to find and connect them with people that had the other things that we needed. Even if we didn't do it, or even if we didn't have like an exclusivity agreement, whatever, we just say, hey, let's have a relationship. If I referred business to you, is that cool?
Yeah.
Right. And we ended up getting nearly all of the market share in that space for the time, because people just wanted to go with the company that they could trust, that was going to do the best job, whether they made money on it or not.
So hearing that story, I have to ask, have you read or followed Jay Abraham then?
No.
So what you're talking about, like I've read one of his books finally this year, And so, but he always talks about like getting the most out of what you've gotten. Like one of his things is leverage points around your competition or the people that either are behind, you've got a set service and there's always somebody that is serving them before they get to you. And there's somebody that's serving them after they get to you. What you've described is like exactly the chapter around using the leverage of those two sides to help your bottom line, but more importantly, provide you as the trusted resource for that client, because now they're not chasing after all those things. You're going, hey, we recognize you have this problem, but we also recognize you're going to have these problems. We already know who to talk to because we trust them. They're good people. So we're just going to keep passing you along. Well, that you get that kickback as well, right? It's like, it's a wonderfully beautiful mentality to take. So even though you haven't heard of him, you and him have a lot in common already.
Well, I like him already, Gene. Well, and it's funny, actually, when you're talking about this, it's not like what I'm talking about is revolutionary.
No.
It's literally repackaged old school Zig Ziglar style, like old school, like rapport building, right? It's been beat out of us for decades now. People don't care about rapport. They don't care about trust. They don't care about that stuff. They just want the best value, best product, best solutions. No. And the fact of the matter is that relationships matter, right? They don't matter more than value. They don't. But if you can deliver your value in a way that also builds a relationship based on trust, then what you have exceeds, it goes beyond what is in front of you, beyond your initial sale and initial transaction. And you have a customer that could come back to you for life, whether you're at company ABC or XYZ.
Oh, 100%, right? Like if you can build that relationship, like back in my, digital service days, like that was like the go-to thing is like, I don't want just one project with you. I'm going to find a way to get you through this project, and it's going to, explain the process. But at the end of the day, you'd be like, you've now invested in a product that's here to build your company. Guess what? We're going to find things that need to be added onto it. Like we had customers that were with us for 6+ years, which is like, a crazy amount. But like, yeah, it was a hustle to go get them, but we didn't have to hustle as hard because we were able to, like, we knew we could keep those clients and keep them growing. It's if you can think about building your business based on relationships, you actually, your turnover on clients is way lower. And now you actually don't work nearly as hard for those next second sales, right? Those additional add-ons come at like a higher profit margin, and you get to keep them happy. Plus, on the other side is that the reality is when you're working with people, something goes wrong. Something always goes wrong. And if you have a high level of relationship with them, you talked about like the value versus relationship doesn't matter. When that matters is when shit hits the fan. Yes. And if you invested a lot in that relationship, you can actually have a number of stumbles as long as you continue to be like, we're still working with you and for you. This happened. No one could predicted it. And here's how we're going to deal with it. You're still important to us and actually mean it. Right. Yes. And how do you handle when the bad things come up, and talk about how those bad things come up is going to like watch then that sales side even take off more.
No, 100%. And if you even take it back even a little bit lighter, because what you're talking about is so true, especially in services, is that things happen in projects.
Yeah.
Like it happens. And the way you deal with it makes a huge impact on whether you're going to actually be successful in the future or not. But one thing that people don't even think about is that I honestly don't feel that sales development reps are given enough credit for their role in the process. And 9 times out of 10, sales are won or lost in the intro call.
Yeah.
That sets up the discovery call. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I had a call yesterday that was set up with a company that was well above our target audience. Okay. So our target audience is companies that are in our SMB. So they're like, 11 to 250 employees. Okay. This company was 25,000 employees. So well beyond.
Yeah.
And I went in there believing that their issue was not being able to produce enough consistent pipeline. Okay. As I started to do my discovery, they got mad at me for the questions I was asking. Because they said, we don't have a problem with this. Why are you asking us these questions? What does this have to do with what we need? And I said, well, I was told that you wanted to do this. And they said, no, that's not a problem for us. I'm not really sure why we're here. And I said, well, me neither. I don't want to waste either of our time. So let's just call it a day, right? And so that situation was that it wasn't qualified effectively. Yeah. So it wasted everybody's time at a huge organization that we don't serve anyway, right? It wasn't qualified for the time. I wanted to see, in all honesty, if the problems were the same for this company. I didn't have a lot of expectation that this was going to be an effective sales process, but I wanted to learn. So I went into it wanting to learn. And what I learned was what I know and what I teach is exactly right. But what's more important though is that the SDR, that top of funnel sales process is so important that like you develop that relationship with the customer so much so that you can put them in a meeting with somebody who doesn't solve the problem that you want without knowing anything about them.
Yeah.
And because you trust the person. Okay, I talked to Gene. I really like Gene. So I'm going to go meet this person. Right? How did we meet Gene? Our mutual friend.
A mutual friend. Wes introduced us.
Yeah, our mutual friend. We both trust. Said, meet this guy. Had no idea who each other were. And it turned out Wes was absolutely right. Right? So there's something about that, is that referral, that relationship. This is why referrals are so effective in sales processes. They close 70% more than your standard lead from any channel. They're faster sales cycles than any channel, but only 11% of sales reps actually ask for referrals. And I can tell you there's even less in the sales development space because they don't feel they own the customer once it's passed off.
Right.
They also are, in some cases, told explicitly that they're not allowed to ask for referrals. Okay.
Why do you think that is?
Territorial reps and territorial sales teams. And I'll go back to that conversation we were having earlier about the alignment between different teams. And a lot of times the marketing, sales development, and sales department's goals are actually conflicting.
Yeah.
So marketing and SDRs have to do as many leads as possible. Sales reps are compensated and measured based on their win rate. So the more leads they have, the harder it will be to have a good win rate.
Right.
Direct conflict with each other, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So what they want is a higher win rate. So if they can source some leads themselves, they're going to have a higher win rate so that they're going to look better when it comes time to their performance review and when, getting raises and stuff like that.
Do you have a tactic in your program for dealing with that conflict? Because that kind of sets everybody up for a big loss. And at the end of the day, the company.
It does. There's two things that I do. Let's say three things. Yeah, three things. Number one, that handoff process that I was telling you before.
Yeah.
Okay. We document a crystal clear, objective handoff process. So it's not about so-and-so has this concept of like, okay, this lead goes to Gene, this lead goes to Jeff, and whatever else. No. It's an objective criteria that you can automate 9 times out of 10. Even if you don't automate, you make it so that it can automate, so that it works like a machine. Okay. So nobody can plug the system. So that's number one. And as part of that number one, that has to be developed as a team. It cannot be developed by sales or sales development or marketing. It has to be developed when all three in the same room together, deciding together.
Right.
Okay. Number two, we do what's called sequence optimization sessions. So we optimize our outreach so that we get the most amount of the highest quality leads. Okay. And we meet as a team between sales development and sales and marketing. It depends on the organization. And we'll sit in a room and actually say, okay, what worked this week in sales development and outbound? What didn't? And what are we going to do differently?
Right.
Okay. So what messaging when we're in the trenches? So marketing that never gets to see the trenches, they get a specific look at this is what is exactly happening with the messaging that we're working on right now. And we optimize it together so that it actually says the right things. So because all three departments have, again, these different perspectives on different mindsets. And so we're all getting on the same page and making sure our messaging is airtight and continually improves. And then the third thing we do is actually what's called a funnel meeting. So this is really cool. I picked it up from a startup that I worked out in Vancouver several years back. But we actually sit down with everybody responsible for each part of the value chain, everything from marketing all the way down to customer success and support. Okay. And we have a dashboard that covers each team has their own section, and we talk about how it goes through that funnel. We talk about where the drop-off points are, what we need to do to address them, and do we need to work as a joint effort and create a project to actually fix this from a grand scale, because sometimes it's a person issue. Sometimes it's, okay, the sales rep just isn't very good. They're not following the plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a process issue. Okay. Like I said, those conflicting metrics. Okay. That's not something sales can fix or sales development can fix. That's something the team has to fix together.
Yeah.
Right. And so what would happen in the end is that you can do this weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever. The purpose is that it's periodic and you're constantly looking at the data, right? Yeah. And what you have is projects that help the entire team as opposed to individual departments.
Right. So you're looking at the whole body if we're thinking about the company as a source, but you're looking at all these pieces that make up this organization all together, and not being like, well, if we just take this one little piece and look at it and tweak it, like how we assumed because it's better, it's going to affect everything else. Be like, actually, you just poisoned the rest of the system, and now it's a really bad place to be. So exactly. It speaks to a lot of things that we hear in the health area right now, is like what's happening with that whole body versus like the individual specialization of it. Yeah. And I think that's really a really fantastic thing. So what I've heard from all that is that clarity is number one. It's people and processes together, and continuous improvement is like that's the secret sauce. Be like, we gave it away.
That's it.
Like now the trick is like implementing it and understanding it. That's when they go to you to pull that all together. But like if they're not willing to accept those four things, yeah, none of it's gonna matter.
That's exactly it, Gene. You put it very well, and thank you for giving me a good soundbite to repeat to my customers. Because the way that we do that is we actually have practical programs. They're live, interactive sessions. We have a 12-week program called Outbound Rescue. We have a 6-week program called Outbound SOS, and each of these programs are designed to do just that: teach you the mindset, give you a framework to actually do the activities, and then implement it in your team in a way that has staying power and is not just a flash in the pan.
Right. That's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for people that want to get in touch with all that, we've got your down below your face. There's the gooutboundsos.com. That's the best place to connect with you as well. In the show notes, we've got your LinkedIn, and I think your other website as well in there. So those are the starting points for you.
Absolutely. And I really look forward to hearing from people and showing them how to actually put this whole Alfred method in action.
That'd be awesome. Gonna make some more Batmans out there. Absolutely. But first, you got to make the Alfreds. Alfred came first, really, at the end of the day.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, you know how, Jeff, how I said at the top of the show, I was going to look up and be like, wow, we were over 40 minutes. Well, we're at 44 minutes and almost 45. So definitely want to be respectful of your time. So before we go, my last question I ask everybody is, we're going to jump into my time machine. We're going to set it for 10 years back. We're going to go back in time, open up the door. You get to give yourself one piece of advice. What would that be?
I can say this several different ways, but I'm going to simplify it: is trust the process. You know you're going to get there. You know what to do. Just trust that it's going to happen. Us ambitious people, we tend to get really antsy and want to speed up the process. And when I got out of university, wanted to get I wanted to make $80,000 right out of university and be an executive and all this stuff. And I'm going to have a house and a car and blah, 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 blah. And then I got $36,000 out of the gate. And I was like, damn, half my goal. But the fact of the matter is, every single goal I've ever had, I've achieved it. It's just taking me slightly longer. And I've had to do more learning and development throughout to get there.
Yeah. Right.
So I'll leave you with a note from one of my last university professors in marketing. Was it's not about, when you're looking at your business, it's not about growth, it's about development. You need to develop the capabilities to be the next level. If you just grow, you can grow with sales, but look at how many founders get ousted by their board just after a huge raise. Yeah. Look at how many founders lose their collective on social media and become actually just gone, mentally divorced and all this other stuff. You can grow, but if you don't develop to handle that growth, then you're gonna lose it.
Wow. Now you talk about a soundbite. That's a soundbite. Is like that difference between putting a line between development and growth, being able to handle, building the capacity to handle the growth that you want to achieve. Like I've never heard about that like that. That's a perspective change. So I'm taking that gem for myself. Thank you very much, man.
Do it up, Gene. We're swapping the sound bites. I love
it. Awesome. Well, that was a great episode, Jeff. Lots of information in there. Great insights around sales. And I really appreciate you being on episode 43 with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too, Gene. Thanks for having me. And good luck getting that 100. I will be tuning in to see how it goes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And everybody else, thank you for watching today. Come back next Wednesday for episode 44. We'll talk to you then. I'm Gene, and this is the LiveCast Conversation with.